Okay, gang, so it is December 4th, and this is Forward Focus. So we are going to take a look at what is going on in a number of different markets here today. So if there's something you want to look at, then bring it on up. I'm going to start by pulling up gold first. I'm going to go over to some charts that I made here earlier. So this is kind of a bigger time frame, what we've got going on gold on an 800 tick. This is just the micro chart, but it gives you kind of an idea of what we have going on here intraday. I'm actually going to pull over a daily chart for you guys as well here. So on the intraday, you can see, we had some pretty strong upside as we were heading into today, rounding, and then the market started to shift. And then we get this flush where it's just kind of a pop and then it comes back into the range. And a lot of times what that does is that can trigger a bigger sell setup. And that's what we saw coming in here this morning. So we ended up getting this breakdown here today, and that's, continuing here as we're going forward right now. So I'm going to go down to the daily chart. Here's the daily chart. So we are coming right up into some decent short-term resistance here. Given the extent of the retracement, it's only like a 38.2% retracement back of this drop, but it's still enough of a resistance level that we're seeing that intraday reaction. So overall, the momentum, still kind of favoring the downside, but there was so much support over here. We get a little bit of reaction off of there. The upside so far, we've seen bigger impulse moves than the one that is in place at the moment. So it can still go further up on the larger daily time frame, coming back into this congestion level. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens here over the next couple of weeks, really. So even though we have that intraday correction, I'm not overly gung-ho about it. Let me show you what we've got here again intraday. So here's the 800. And then this is where we were getting that kind of breakdown happening here this morning. So you get that kind of double top going on after that shift that I drew for you. And this brought it into the support from the previous low, but because of the bigger shift in momentum, support is really kind of down in here a little bit more around like 1830 zone. So even though this had what looked like an inverse head and shoulders at that previous low, because of that bigger king and queen, it wasn't really a good buy zone at that point. So we were talking about this in the forum here this morning, and you can even see here how it could have triggered that false setup because it had that avalanche here. It had a two-wave move down. You've got your even spacing between your lows, and overall you have a slower correction. But this is not a good buy when your larger time frames or your king or your queen look the way that they do. So that is what is impacting our action today. And you can see it did come down further after that. It came into about 1832-ish. So close to that 1830 zone there. It's not quite, but into that zone still. So, we're at a zone that's kind of, back and forth, but it's like, what we talked about with the overall market right now. There's so much going on in the overall market that there's a lot of kind of infighting going on like the shorter time frames and then the bigger time frames. So here's our daily chart on the NASDAQ. This is just the micro NASDAQ. And as you can see, we have this baby check mark. It had that really extreme move up, and then it went into this period of congestion where things were just kind of a mess there for about 2 weeks or so. We started breaking out of this kind of right around Thanksgiving. Let me clear this. I'm going to move it to a 60-minute chart here. So we started breaking out of this with the check mark for Thanksgiving here. And we've just kind of been steadily moving higher, but over the last couple of days, we started seeing some flush action to the highs where it couldn't really sustain the bigger move. It hit that measured move right there. And then it's really struggled. And so right now, there's not a very good pattern on the bigger time frames here on this intraday chart or even on the daily chart. We're in what we would consider to be a widening up zone where there's a lot of back and forth action, but there's no major setup happening here. And we were talking about this kind of congestion here yesterday in League of Traders too, where we get this big pop, we get this congestion, and then it's really easy to get these flushes happening, but still not a good trend move. So it's meant that the market has just been stuck in this day trade type of action, not a good zone for swing traders overall. Sure, you'll have some individual stocks, but in the overall market, not really that great. It's something where we could go into more choppiness. We could get a lot of overlap, like, we see down in here or even in here where there's not really a great trend move. It could try to round off and shift and pull back a little bit more, but there's not really just high odds either way. So at this point, I'm really treating things where my focus is upon more of the intraday setups. And I'm not letting that daily really be as much of a guide at this time because intraday, we could get both buy and sell setups up here pretty easily. Let me show you guys some of the other indices. So here is our ES. Here's our weekly. You can see again, kind of the same type of thing going on here. Back and forth, not really a good setup. It's kind of creating like a potential tilted check mark, actually. It's a lot stronger than the NASDAQ. So we're seeing here is, this kind of tilted check mark. So, there's room for that to pop there, but the NASDAQ's not looking as good. So it's just kind of you guys, I'm not really feeling strongly about it one way or the other here as we head into December, and then we're going to be heading into December holidays. And it just feels like people are non-committal at the moment. They're not panicking yet, but not really too excited about a whole lot of buying right now. Here's the kind of bigger check mark here, and then we get the smaller one in here on the 240. And this triggered yesterday. So we're just kind of seeing that follow through on that here. But does it just go to a measured move here and react? That's possible. It's hard to say right now. There's just not a whole lot going on. Intraday, though, we are getting good setups. So, like even here just now, You can see we've got this momentum reversal down at the lows, then this inverse head and shoulders. So we've got, some smaller time frame setups that are happening. We had a pretty avalanche up here. You can see the momentum shifting as it's coming right into that halfway point. You had your inverse head and shoulders, kind of messy, but you've got the megaphone down in here too. So a lot of setups happening intraday, but they're just not bigger time frame setups. So as long as you just keep that in mind, you'll be fine. Just don't get too aggressive. I mean, look at what we've seen happening over the last couple of days here. So here was kind of that last break with the two-way pullback. And we do have it kind of rounding, which is not necessarily great at this point because we're kind of more at a higher end in the market. So I'm concerned like that it could do like traps and then try to turn around where it just kind of shifts this momentum like this and then gets flushes to the downside like that. So that's a bit of a concern for me here as we head into later in this, even into today, later into the end of the day today and then into early next week. How about the time development for breakout? I mean, time development wise, we were okay. If you're looking even like, this rounding for like an inverse head and shoulders, you're okay. It's just that with all of these little traps over and over again over these previous highs, it's not as convincing to me. We're just not, I don't think like new highs are going to trap as many people into new buy scenarios here. Let me show you guys the Russell. Russell's quite different than the overall market right now. 8,000 on Russell. We had a really pretty inverse head and shoulders with a nice two-wave correction. So it was doing a lot of what the overall market was doing, but it was doing a much better job at it. Just a lot cleaner setup as it was pulling back. And on the daily time frame here, you can see momentum is pretty strong. We're getting these smaller moves. I don't know exactly how far this is going to be able to go. When we're looking at this as a continuation, let me clear this. We are right at that 76.4% here. So this tells me we really need to be careful at this point, because what happens if it just goes into more congestion again, like the overall market is doing? So it's stronger than the overall market, but not really great continuation buy setups here, just because it already has all these smaller breakouts. And with this shift here, and compared to this, it didn't keep going right away here to really do that as like more of a 1, 2, 3. It went into another base again. If you're looking at this as like a tilted head and shoulders, it's even further past where that would have been like with the even spacing for a tilted head and shoulders to try to continue. So that tells me it's still also not as excited, even though it's stronger than everything else here. It's just not as excited as it could be, you know, it went past like an ideal break continuation. Another way you could look at it is like this, but then in that case, it's a little early for the time development there. So it's late for the really fast continuation, and it's early for the later continuation as far as time development goes. Let's go look at some of you guys' individual stocks here. We're going to look at SDGR, EVC, I'll put UNG. So EVC, this is, you know, really similar to like that shift in momentum that we just had off of that low in the NASDAQ, but it's up at some extreme levels. It's not, I wouldn't say that it can't go any further though. I mean, the way that this is pushing up here, a lot of times that can still keep pushing up a bit more. What you want to watch for are like those little ballet feet where the momentum really starts to shift, and then you start getting like some deeper V pullbacks. So that can kind of turn things around. So if it does a deeper V and then goes into, the main risk thing would be if it did like something like this and, you know, kind of went out like that, and then it could break further, and that could bring it into more of a pullback further down. So even if it comes in, shifts a little bit here and does like a slightly lower low, that's okay. But if it kind of shifts and flatlines over here, then that could totally bring it back down in here. But I don't see that happening at this point in time. I don't see an indication of that. So overall, this is something that could, you know, I expect the momentum to shift, but still kind of keep creeping. SDGR, we've got a megaphone here. This one could have a harder time. That 50% just seems like a really strong resistance here. You've got your two waves up, kind of pushing through that 38.2% that we were looking at before. So I do see this having a risk of being able to, you know, do something that could bring it back down again. The fact that it pulled back so much here, even despite the strength over here, that concerns me. That's going to make it harder to really keep going as well. This is going to be a really good level of resistance in here. So you might see some like day trade setups in here on the buy side, but I would be really aggressive with them from the advanced trade management perspective. SHW, you've got that flush there. That's going to be harder to overcome that. So I would suspect you're going to continue to see a greater shift on this weekly time frame now. So this flush like this and then this shift like this, a lot of times that will start to lead to some bigger reversal patterns. You might get like kind of a messy momentum reversal that could even go into momentum reversal plus later. But overall, expect a lot more back and forth here. If this keeps up the momentum down here, you could even get like a megaphone happening, but you would want to see this just go with like a kneecap to keep that momentum going to get that into that spot. NIO. So this is, an example of how those extreme moves can kind of play out where they still can push a bit higher. This is more of a range that looks like it would have an easier time trying to go lower now because of how far this pulled back. It came all the way back to where our ballet foot started shifting that momentum. So as a result, trying to totally recover is going to be a lot harder. This is something where you could even get shifts like this happening, where it'll go and do like a two-way move up and then kind of shift like this, have a little bit of a slower move. That would be a pretty normal follow through. Let me kind of clear it up for you. So it could be something where it goes and does, something like that. That would be kind of normal given what we're seeing here. So if you want to do a screenshot of that, just watch for, how that momentum tries to continue to play out there. Dollar Swiss broke through a really key zone where it was trying to do a momentum reversal plus, but look at this monthly. It's just really bearish. So this came here, and on the daily, you got like that foot, and then you got these slightly lower lows. So it's almost like it tried to do a momentum reversal plus, but it really pushed it out into a bear flag. And this is exactly the type of thing that we have been talking about over the last 2 weeks. So something might try to go as a momentum reversal, can't really get going, and then it does a second zone. So it really treats this as the first correction. This is the second correction. So this on the downside, even like kneecaps and stuff could still keep this going on the downside. Upside, I think you're going to end up with stunted moves. You might get some little pops and stuff, but I wouldn't expect a bigger full reversal. So here it's kind of trying to shift. So maybe this could do a pop, but I would think I'd rather it flushed first. So you can see that with this, momentum really hasn't kind of shifted yet. So there's not much of a trap. So if this could flush down here, you could get some intraday setups here as we go into next week for the buy side. But I would just treat them as intraday. And then measure this distance here. And this is a spot where if things aren't pulling up by then, that could break down because that would be like your head and shoulders kind of zone like that. So I would want that to going kind of by the first of the week, I guess, beginning of the week, maybe end of the day on Monday. This one we're seeing some resistance. This is our kiwi here. And this is just a widening up zone now. So, you know, a lot more back and forth. There's not like a main setup here to watch for. They're just getting the shift in the momentum. So this is where things can happen, like getting flushes and then slightly higher highs or retests. It could even just, you know, base out and tap up a little bit higher. So there's not a key setup here at this point. Momentum is now at an average pace. The impulse move itself overall is pretty average. So you're at an exhaustion widening up zone. Definitely more of a scalper's market at the moment. Can see it had a 2T here on the 60-minute into today. So that's your move that's following through. It came almost basically into the T4 zone. So it's right around the target zone for your main first target on a 2T that's coming after some of these little other shifts here. This is T3, this is T4, so target 3, target 4. But it's not an extreme momentum move, so that hasn't really flipped it over too much yet. So this could be a harder spot to try to break. Now, if it kind of bases right here, you know, maybe that can bring this in and bring in some stronger selling, but it's off to a slow start first. So we need to see like that little shift on a smaller time frame to bring in that bigger selling now. And again, this is still a widening up zone on that bigger time frame. UNG is trying to go for a 2B. Again, it's one of those super dead stocks, so I don't know how excited I would get about it. It's not really doing a favorable shift here on the daily chart, even though you've got the two waves down, sorry. Even though we've got the two waves down here. It's still really, really weak. You know, you might get like a pop like this that could just kind of trap some bulls maybe. And then sell off again. It feels a lot like that gold chart did that I showed you guys right at the beginning of our session. It feels a lot like that. Let me show you. Like, see how this was kind of shifting and then it just kind of fell. But look at the bigger time frame. Come on, there we go. So see how it's just kind of sputtering down here and then it tried to shift right here and gave a little bit of a pop, but that pop led to further downside. This is where I feel this could be at right here. Like we could be right here on that. See where to go right here. Oops, sorry, I tried to. Ugh. I think this computer's on its last leg, you guys. It's an older one. Let's see here. There we go. It's just not going to cooperate. Nope. I think it's possessed. But anyways, this move down like here, there's so much overlap and kind of this congestion here in the middle, extra pullback, kind of popped, kind of shifted there. Then see how gold popped up, but then gold sold off. You know, it kept going down to like 1832 down in here. So that's what I think could happen on this one as well. And this is that UNG there, you guys. All right, let's do a couple more here. Did I pull up that SSTK? I don't think I did. And this is something that it has a pretty good shot of continuing. You'll look at like short little term corrections, but overall this looks like a really good stock for continuing to hold longer term investment. Sure, you might get some stalls in here. Just watch for any like real sort of rounding. But the way this is coming up here, even when in that changes the momentum, it's still usually going to keep going. So I'm not overly concerned about this as a longer term. Yes, you've got measured move resistance in here, so it's not like, you know, the best new buy zone, but it's also like I don't see any reason to panic or anything on exiting. We see a lot of these where they'll just even go and a lot of times break that previous high. Watch how it comes into the 76.4% retracement of this drop. Let me put that on there. If it makes it into that 76.4 without really doing too much for a pause, you can get a reaction off that 76.4, but then still get that continuing up into that 100%. So I'm not too concerned. I think, you know, momentum can change, but not too concerned about the trend changing at this point anyways. All right, and then let's take a look at PLTR. PLTR pulled back way more than a third. That's going to be really hard to get new highs. I don't know, guys. I don't like trading these because a lot of times if they give like a phoenix here, they can trap you and go in and do like a double correction. So it could even go like that before it tries to go up, or it just could just kind of, you know, stall and go and do a 2B like this. So I'd kind of just leave this one alone right now. And then AMD. Yeah, it's more like a crap shot. AMD is the same thing, you guys. So when we're looking at this one, you know, it pulled back a really good chunk. I mean, it has some better rounding out, so this is easier for this to pull up here. So intraday, there's room for this to keep going. I would want it to do just more of a kneecap here before it continues. But with the bigger pullback, that could impact that bigger time frame follow through a lot. So here you can again see a bigger pullback here, right? It just couldn't offer really good setups right away. It just kind of messed around a lot. So, you know, a little bit of upside maybe, but it's just not too exciting here at the moment. I wouldn't want to do any new setup. You basically had your continuation right here when it broke out of this. So that was your confirmation. So you basically got a measured move zone there when you're looking at your kind of first start and then your second. So this is just a widening up zone again here. Could it reach 100? That's probably a magnet on this one. I think that's where they're going to try to pull it, or really darn close up there. I would say that's certainly a possibility, or even a pretty decent probability going into mid December. It just might be kind of choppy as it tries to get there. So it could even flush down here and then kind of push back up. So what you really want to see happening is you want to have it hold this channel zone. So even if it does try to push in here, I wouldn't want that zone to break. Otherwise, you could be looking at a much longer correction before it would try to get to there. All right, guys, well, we're going to wrap this up here today. So thank you all for joining me here. And I have got the rest of the videos from this week uploaded into my Vimeo. So I'm going to get those connected here. So you guys can go back and study those for those in League of Traders, and I'll get this thrown over on YouTube as well. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend, and I'll see you back here next week.